Hello, fellow Mech Warriors, Mage Leader here. Man, what a time to be a gamer. I've been an avid video game enthusiast all my life, a fact which I'm sure will come as a shock to precisely no one. When I'm not reading Battletech books or making videos showing how out of touch I am with the changing tabletop landscape, I'm often losing myself in a digital space, slaying monsters, saving damsels, or generally making a nuisance of myself. Recently, however, gaming has become a somewhat difficult hobby to enjoy. There have been good releases scattered here and there, but those of us who've been around the block have often found ourselves feeling let down. Whether it's a garbage entry in a beloved franchise, an old reliable company falling to the corporate dark side, or a promising new title brought low by the injection of politics and ideology, there seems to be no end of things to complain about. Us old-timers, and it pains me to call myself that, remember a time before DLC, season passes, live service, and AI-generated gun skins. As such, this new landscape can feel cold and alien. But I'm not here to whinge about the absolute state of modern gaming. No, in the spirit of Christmas, I'd like to take a little walk down memory lane, to share a little bit of nostalgic joy. If you're tired of having your video games lecture you or try to rope you into yet another glorified subscription service, then I recommend taking a step back and trying something else. This video is a list of games that I've enjoyed playing over the years. Some are recent releases, but most aren't. Some of them are already famous, a few slightly less so. Think of it as an unranked collection of recommendations. These are my comfort games, the one I return to whenever the bullshit gets a little too intense. If you remember these games, perhaps it's time for a revisit. If you're on the younger end, maybe give these games a try and see just how good we had it back in the day. So without any further ado, allow me to share with you some games I think you should try. Here are my top 10 games to play instead of modern slop.
10 years ago, I asked for time, and that time was granted by you. You, the strength in my arm, the holders of my dreams.
Ah, Killzone. You're such an odd little duck. Yeah, the PS2 struggled when it came to first-person shooters. Most of the multi-platform releases struggled to run on the underpowered hardware, and the exclusives were... well, there really weren't any. Enter Guerrilla Games, a studio that looked around at the market and said, what are the two most popular kinds of shooters? Halo and Call of Duty? Sci-fi and World War II? Okay, so which do we copy? And then some underpaid intern in the back stood up and said, what if we did both? Brilliant! Promote that man and give him $1 gazillion. The end result was Killzone, a game touted as a Halo killer. In hindsight... But at the time, those were big words. So how did it go? Is Killzone the PS2 equivalent to the adventures of John Halo in Windows 10? Well, no. Killzone is a very different game, and it often leaves a lot of people disappointed. The slow movement speed, sluggish controls, lack of aim assist, and often punishing difficulty turned a lot of people off. A lot of players often neglected in favor of its more polished sequel, and while I can admit that Killzone 2 was a better game overall, I don't think it's fair to leave the first game untouched. Killzone is janky, but I think the jank actually works in its favor. It plays differently from almost every other shooter of its day. The combat is slow, yes, but it's also weighty. The weapons have incredible feedback, and the lack of aim assist really makes you feel the heft of your guns. The world of Vecta is gritty, grounded, and unforgiving, lending the battles a tactical feel while still keeping the action high. There's no music during the levels, which only serves to boost that grounded feeling, but when the soundtrack does kick in, it's absolutely superb. The story isn't really anything to write home about, but out of the series as a whole, it's actually the best one by a country mile. The existence of Haka alone makes it interesting, and it's a real shame that they never utilized him again after this. The campaign can get somewhat repetitive, but the conclusion is suitably epic. If you've never played Killzone, I suggest giving it a chance. It might not blow your socks off, but it's a fun, simple shooter that remains unique and memorable. Give it a try. There are a lot of Star Wars video games out there. From Jedi Knight to the Old Republic, there's a little something for everyone when it comes to this franchise. Most of the games are even decent, but when I sat down to pick one for this list, the answer couldn't have been more obvious. Battlefront 2, no not that one, is a game that utterly captivated me as a kid. I remember going to Walmart and seeing the 3-pack sitting on the shelf. Battlefront 1, Battlefront 2, and Republic Commando all together for one low price. When I finally got it, I was hooked. I loved all 3 games, but Battlefront 2 would eat up all of my time. The idea of playing through some of the biggest moments in my favorite movies as an everyday foot soldier was spellbinding, and I couldn't stop playing. There was so much content, so many maps, so many modes, so many characters. It was everything a young Star Wars fan could ever want. Whenever Disney slop gets me down in the mouth, I return to this game and am instantly reminded why it is that, despite it all, I'm still a Star Wars fan. This game has been in my library for nearly 2 decades, and it's not leaving anytime soon. If you enjoy Star Wars, then a trip back to this classic is bound to do you some good. Better yet, get some buddies together and play a few rounds. The servers work, and while the population isn't huge, it's still a fantastic time. Trust me, there's nothing quite as satisfying as getting sniped by your friend only to come back as Darth Vader and force throw his ass into the Death Star laser. And man, I haven't even mentioned the space battles. There is no arena quite like a space battle, no test of a man's skill and endurance quite like a dogfight. This right here is where boys became men. The space battles in this game didn't just forge me into the man I am today, they straight up shoved me onto my back and took my virginity. Going back now is like visiting an old flame for a late night booty call. It's hot, exciting, and always satisfying. Don't die a virgin, play this game. And now for something completely different. Stardew Valley came out at just the right time for me. I've always had a soft spot for the Harvest Moon series, but never devoted all that much time to them. Occasionally I would revisit them, but I had largely given up casual games in favor of more action-based experiences. Enter college, where I wasted years of my life stressing out over money and a degree that I would ultimately never finish. It was a tough few years that transformed me from the high school athlete I used to be into the recovering blob you see before you today. Fun fact, I still have nightmares about being late for class, missing deadlines, and oversleeping to this day. Yeah, I wasn't built for academia, it turns out, but right around the time I was going through it, a little farming game fell out of the sky and found its way into my Steam library. I didn't have a ton of time to devote to it, but it still made an impact. During one of my most continuously stressful and frustrating periods, Stardew Valley served as my happy place. There's not a lot to say about the game itself. It's a spiritual successor to games like Rune Factory and Harvest Moon, where you run a farm until a small number becomes big number. Grow crops, converse with the townsfolk, fight slimes, raise animals, flirt with the local girls, and save your hard-earned cash to expand your farm and improve the town. But it's the slower and carefree nature of it all that makes it so appealing. And all the hustle and bustle of the 9-to-5 rat race, it feels good to escape to a little slice of honest workin' pastoral life. If you found yourself overworked and underpaid, or if you're tired of being overloaded with the sensual stimulation of media and advertising, maybe a little stay on your late grandfather's farm will do you some good. It's cheap, regularly goes on sale, and will leave you happier than it found you. Dust it off and give it a whirl. I thought for a while about which JRPG I should include. There's an extensive list of quality titles out there, after all. Between 9 amazing Final Fantasy games, the Breath of Fire series, Legend of the Dragoon, Star Ocean, Radiant Historia, Chrono Trigger, and a million others, narrowing it down to a single choice was a pretty daunting task. But when I think back on which of these games stuck with me the most, it actually becomes a far easier choice. These games are all great, but no series clings to my subconscious quite like Dragon Quest. Specifically, Dragon Quest IX. Dragon Quest IX is both the most unique and the most derivative game in the entire series. It does more or less the same things as every other game, but with lots of little touches that make it stand out. As my favorite premise out of them all. You are a Celestian, a guardian angel tasked with protecting mortals and collecting the ethereal manifestation of their gratitude as an offering to Yggdrasil, the world's tree. Caught up in a celestial conspiracy, you fall from the heavens and lose your powers, and must now assist the mortals in order to collect their gratitude and regain your true form. It frames your actions throughout the game perfectly, and the game takes on an episodic nature as you sweep your way into town after town, solving their individual problems one by one. All the usual Dragon Quest quirkiness is here. The puns, the wacky characters, and the Puff Girls are all present and accounted for. But the game's approach to multiplayer makes the party of cardboard standees less important than usual. The story focuses far more on the supporting characters and their problems, giving this particular world a lifelike quality that I've never truly found in the other games. The game has a major focus on customization as well, giving you full control over not just your own character, but your entire party. The real standout feature of the game, however, is its multiplayer. As a DS exclusive, it incorporated a shockingly strong local co-op feature. You and 3 of your friends could adventure together, either splitting up or sticking close. It's not as easy to get 4 people together to play it nowadays, but if you can, I guarantee that you won't regret it. The game is bursting at the seams with content, and even after completing the main story, there's still tons to do. In a world of season passes and content roadmaps, it feels incredible to go back and enjoy a massive game that was feature complete at launch. Find it, emulate it, whatever you have to do, but you owe it to yourself to play Dragon Quest IX. Oh, Nintendo, you over-litigious assholes. When they aren't retroactively suing their competitors for infringing patents that didn't even exist when their game was launched, the Big N occasionally makes some damn good games. While I will always be a Zelda kid at heart, I won't deny that Metroid has been another Nintendo favorite. I'm not a massive fan of the newer style of Metroid games with their over-reliance on free aim, parry mechanics, and railroaded progression. Seriously, some of you guys who love Dread despite its crushing linearity owe Other M a massive apology, but that's another discussion for another time. When Nintendo put out their remake of Metroid 2, I was underwhelmed. Not just because of the gameplay changes, but because I already had a better version of the game running on my PC. Another Metroid 2 remake, or AM2R for short, is a fan project that rebuilt the entirety of Metroid 2 in the style of the GBA Metroid games, otherwise known as Peak Perfection. It is, without exaggeration, the best all-around Metroid game ever made, and Nintendo had no part in its creation. In fact, it's so good that Nintendo considered it a threat to their brand and hit the creators with a nice, hefty C&D. The game doesn't have official support anymore, but plenty of community-made bug fixes and improved versions are floating around online. Man, it just doesn't get any better than this. The extended moveset, the superb level design, the crazy boss fights, the quality of life upgrades. This game is so polished that it makes Samus Returns look like the fan game. It's a game that not only captures the essence of that original title, but also expands upon it in logical ways that elevates the game from a clunky Game Boy title to a genuine classic like the rest of its siblings. I love Super Metroid as much as the next guy, but in my eyes, AM2R takes the cake for the best game in the franchise. Shame that we don't have the Super Nintendo game done up in this style. Maybe someday Nintendo's Eye of Sauron will look away long enough for some passionate fan to whip up that masterpiece. Meanwhile, AM2R will continue to run circles around both Samus Returns and Metroid Dread. The game might be harder than Bill Cosby in a women's coma ward, but it's a tremendous experience that everyone should try.
Here are your orders. Target, Andrew Sterling. Ground, Chang Political Prison, Changsha Province, China. Tuesday night is our boys' last on the block before execution New Year's Day. So make this quick and painless.
And back to the PS2 we go. You know, the term hidden gem gets thrown around by Zoomers a lot, usually just referring to any game that came out before they were born. It's overused to the point of losing its entire meaning, but in the case of Cold Winter, I believe it genuinely applies. Let me ask you something. Remember Black? Yeah, that cinematic shooter with a kick-ass score? Sure you do. Well, what if I told you that there was a similar game, except it had a better story, an equally impressive soundtrack, better, more expansive level design, a third act that doesn't suck ass, and gore effects so good that they rival Soldier of Fortune? Welcome to Cold Winter. Sadly overlooked by many, Cold Winter sees you embark on a globe-trotting special agent adventure. Some have described its enemy roster as racially insensitive, and I agree. In fact, the enemies are so offensive that I make it my personal mission to exterminate each and every one of them from the game with extreme prejudice. You'll gleefully shoot your way out of a Chinese prison, through a town of Durka-Durkas, and many other such places, blowing offensive caricatures into tiny bits with a wide variety of satisfying weapons. The game boasts a phenomenal combat system where every shot has fantastic impact. There's a rudimentary physics system that allows you to create your own cover, and the levels are cleverly designed to encourage exploration, hiding away special weapons and the materials to craft high-end explosives as rewards for those who enjoy combing their surroundings for goodies. And yes, I did say craft. There's a simple and unobtrusive crafting system in the game, allowing you to make Molotov cocktails, shaped charges, time bombs, lockpicks, and other such things from the pause menu. Cold Winter is a game that catches you off guard. There's nothing about it that stands out at first glance, but to those of us who played it at the time, it's never left us. I would go so far as to say that it's my favorite shooter on the PS2. Frame rate and control issues aside, it's an incredible game with a shockingly meaty campaign that will have you wondering why no one ever talks about it. Play it for yourself and spread the word.
The beast is awoken!
Those conniving, piss-distilling, bridge-building liars. The creature was supposed to be out for days. They'll pay for this.
What the hell manner of cargo are you transporting? Help! We need roofs! We must contain it! Help!
Come now, let's send it back.
Spiders is one of those companies that doesn't get enough love. If I had to describe them in one sentence, I would say that Spiders makes the kind of games that play the way you remember BioWare games playing. They make honest-to-God RPGs with interesting characters, engaging stories, and gameplay that actually understands what the word fun means. Nowhere is this better exemplified than with Greedfall, a game about colonizing foreign lands in the hope of finding a cure for a terrible disease known as the Malachor. You play as Legat de Sardet, and it's your personal mission to explore the island of Tir-Fadi and discover its secrets. The world of Greedfall is captivating and beautiful, with a truly unique visual style that seamlessly blends pedantic fantasy, shiver-me-timber swashbuckling, and puritanical zealotry in a gorgeous Age of Sail blend. Gameplay is engaging and fun, if a bit wobbly at times, and the character choices are hands down some of the best I've ever seen in a video game. Your party is so colorful, likable, and full of background and life that it makes Dragon Age Origins look like a cast of cardboard cutouts. As an RPG, Greedfall is absolute perfection. It's a game where your stats matter while still being simple and straightforward enough to understand. You can play as anything you want, but not everything, which makes your party members all the more useful. The story, far from being the typical anti-colonial hand-wringing you might expect, actually handles its narrative with subtle nuance, providing you with some genuinely thought-provoking moral quandaries that feel earned rather than contrived and pretentious. Take notes, Obsidian. Your party members and their side quests actually matter here and can even affect whether some of them live or die, a fact that stunned me during my first playthrough when one of my favorite companions betrayed me and forced me to kill him in a duel, all because I neglected his questline. In short, Greedfall is a game that can scratch your RPG itch. If BioWare's latest Slop has got you feeling like rapidly inspecting the underside of a tall bridge, maybe consider taking a step away from the railing and giving this a try instead. You won't regret it. Risk of Rain 2. You know, I'm not a big fan of roguelike games. I often find them unfairly punishing, repetitive, and generally pointless. But there's one exception that managed to hook me directly in my dopamine receptors, and that's the Risk of Rain series. Both of these games are fantastic, but the sequel is just, well, it's sublime. On the surface, it's pretty simple. Pick your character and enter the gauntlet, fighting increasingly difficult waves of enemies as you scramble to stay strong enough to survive. Each one offers a wholly unique playstyle, but the heroes are just scratching the surface of what this game has to offer. The game relies on power-ups that you collect from chests scattered around the maps, each providing bonuses that range from simple healing buffs to bleed damage to chain lightning. The kicker? There's no limit to how many you can collect, and their effects all stack. Risk of Rain 2 is a game where you go from a small tadpole in the food chain to an absolute god of chaos and destruction, but that doesn't make it easy. There are enemies in this game that will humble you quickly if you aren't prepared, and there's nothing more satisfying than deleting an enemy that used to be a boss fight. High-level Risk of Rain gameplay is so chaotic and surging with dopamine that it's been known to induce seizures in Japanese children, and it's more addicting than crack. I've had to purposely keep myself from playing this game on occasion because I would sit down to try for a quick run, and the next thing I knew I would look up and discover that 4 hours had passed and I was still glued to my seat. The game has tons of variety in its enemies, abilities, playable characters, and its levels. The developers also constantly add new content as well, meaning that every time I come back, there's always something unexpected to enjoy. There are dozens of secrets to discover and even interesting lore tidbits here and there as you begin to grapple with powers beyond mortal comprehension. It looks like a lot to take in, and it is, but the gameplay itself is shockingly approachable and easy to understand. You will gain incredible power, but it comes to you bit by bit, allowing you to acclimate yourself as you grow stronger. In no time at all, you'll be zipping around like a demon, slaying monsters by the dozen and basking in the power fantasy. If you like a game that makes you feel like a god while still being challenging enough to remain entertaining, then Risk of Rain 2 is all but guaranteed to hook you. Don't be intimidated. Give it a try.
So, I'm non-binary.
Look familiar? Scenes like these are happening all over the galaxy right now. You could be next. That is, unless you make the most important decision of your life. Prove to yourself that you have the strength and the courage to be free.
Join the Helldivers.
Become part of an elite peacekeeping force!
See exotic new life forms. And spread managed democracy throughout the galaxy. Become a hero. Become a legend. Become a Helldiver.
Well, this one's hardly a surprise. Anyone who's been following my streams or my Twitter account knows of my infatuation with Helldivers II, a game that needs little introduction. It exploded onto the scene back in February and nearly died overnight when Sony decided to try and shoot it in the foot. Thankfully, the game unleashed one of its best features in response, its community. The player response was so strong that it scared the piss out of Sony and they flinched, withdrawing their PSN requirement entirely. Ever since then, the game has been on a bit of a roller coaster, but even at its lowest point, it has remained the finest multiplayer experience I've had in years. Helldivers 2 isn't just your average horde shooter, it's an entire theater of war with persistent goals and objectives, a human game master who goes by Joel, and literal hundreds of thousands of players all working together to protect Super Earth from any and all threats, both foreign and domestic. The gameplay is a satisfying blend of cinematic action and milsim, striking a perfect balance between grounded militarism and heightened reality. It's not just fun, it's stupidly fun. Missions play out in interesting ways, and while the objectives might stay the same, no two firefights ever are. The enemy variety is strong, especially now with the addition of an entire third faction to fight. You are given insanely powerful tools, and it's up to you to use them accordingly. Just remember that friendly fire is always on, and that they give you so many extra lives for a reason.
Also, can we take a moment to just talk about how the sound design and the music is so amazing?
Oh my god,
Like,
yeah.
I love that they have a like War of the Worlds theme.
God damn it, Arcos! God damn it! You didn't call it!
I'm sorry, sir.
Oh my god! Oh. Oh my god.
It's all my fault. You know it.
I won't
Not
team.
gonna sugarcoat it.
I won't team kill you for it, but I will think about it. I will fantasize about doing it, but I won't actually do it. Helldivers 2 is bristling with personality, from the silly patriotic phrases your soldiers scream at each other, to the manic laughter they emit when firing a gun on full auto. It's all very tongue-in-cheek, the kind of thing that makes Redditors strap on their media literacy caps, but it's also just incredibly fun. Getting into character and stomping bugs for the good of democracy and sweet liberty never gets old. It's a game that truly gives you the chance to act like the American that the Swedish dev team imagines you as. The game offers great variety, enjoyable progression, and a live service model that doesn't make me want to rip my hair out. Hell, when the devs messed up a recent piece of premium content, they responded by straight up giving out a massive chunk of it for free. Arrowhead isn't perfect, but one thing they've consistently shown is that they take player feedback on board. With the Illuminate storyline now progressing in real time, there's never been a better opportunity to drop in and spread managed democracy across the stars. Don't let liberty die, citizen. Join the Helldivers.
Any receiving unit. I have contact with main enemy force inside Central Courtyard. I'll delay them here as long as I can.
It wouldn't be my channel if I didn't have something from BattleTech at the top of this list. Competition for the giant robot slot was stiff, to be sure. When it comes to BattleTech, there's a surprising amount of quality content on offer, but there's no denying that the Mech Warrior franchise stands head and shoulders above the rest. These games, recent titles excluded of course, are some of the best gaming experiences that you can have, period. So that leaves the inevitable question: which Mech Warrior game is the best? Well, that's a tough question, and I love every one of the classic games, but for my money, the best game all around is Mech Warrior 4 Mercenaries. Mech Warrior 4 is a bit of a controversial one for a few people. It streamlined a lot of what the previous games did, had a more restrictive mech lab, some seriously bonkers loadouts, and a focus on action over simulation, but in my book it hits a perfect sweet spot. Much like its dogfighting cousin Crimson Skies, Mech Warrior 4 is a combination of simulation and arcade feel. It's accessible enough for the average player to enjoy, while still having enough simulation elements to make your joystick the ideal way to play. No game handles battle mechs with as much weight and respect as 4. Your machine lumbers along like the king of the battlefield, laying waste to everything in its path. You fight back strong opponents as you try to squeeze a profit out of warfare, battling your way to fame and fortune as you fight on the front lines of the FedCom Civil War. The game sports a massive roster of mechs to choose from, each one with a unique feel and opportunities for upgrades. The mech lab is smooth and efficient, giving you just enough control while still being reasonable. Mission objectives come in a wide range of flavors, ranging from protection to escort to seek and destroy, and even a fully fleshed out arena mode where you can fight your way into the championships and earn yourself both glory and riches. The inner sphere is your playground, and it's up to you to make your own way. Combat is both fluid and punchy, with plenty of weight behind every shot. Blowing enemy machines apart in this game is still among the most satisfying it's ever been, rivaled only by Mech Warrior 3 for its sense of impact. Weapons feel powerful, and putting an enemy war machine into the dirt has never been quite this satisfying. It will make you want a flight stick, but it's also perfectly playable with a mouse and keyboard. Oh, and did I mention that it's free? Yeah, Mech Warrior 4 Mercenaries is abandonware, meaning that it's readily available to play. If you download it from myabandonware.com and follow the guide on the website, getting it running on modern hardware is a breeze. There's literally no excuse. If you haven't played this game, go out and get it. So that's my list. I couldn't fit all of my favorites on here. I easily have enough to make an entire second video on it. If your personal favorites didn't appear here, then please leave a comment telling me which games you've been going back to. I hope that by listening to me gush about a few of my favorites, you might find something either worth trying out or worth revisiting. Gaming might be in a tight spot now, but the hobby is still one of the best out there, and these games always help me remember why. I hope that you enjoy them as much as I do. I'll be sure to keep an eye on the comments section of this video to find even more games to try out. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, this is Mage Leader, signing off.